Chosen one, they picked a fight with you over nothing, and now they cannot sleep because of it. Not because you asked for it to be true, but because it already is. There was no real reason, no wrong you did, no line you crossed. Just a decision, somewhere in their head, that today was the day to test you, to push you, to see how far they could go before you cracked. And you didn't crack. That's the part they never planned for. That's the part living rent-free in their chest right now, at midnight, at 2 in the morning, at that hour when the house goes quiet and their mind refuses to. They wanted a reaction. They didn't get one. They wanted you rattled, small, apologizing for something you never did. Instead, you looked at the whole thing and simply didn't move. And that stillness, chosen one, that's the thing keeping them awake tonight. Not guilt in the soft, forgivable sense. The sharp kind. The kind that sits on the chest at 3 a.m. and refuses to let the eyes close. The kind that replays the exact sentence they said, the exact tone they used, over and over. Uninvited, unstoppable. Here's what they don't understand yet. A fight built on nothing doesn't just disappear because the shouting stopped. It moves underground. It waits. And then, when the room is dark and there's nobody left to perform for, it comes back up for air. That's where they are right now. Not performing, not posturing. Just lying there, staring at a ceiling, listening to a silence that sounds exactly like your name. You didn't do anything to them tonight. You didn't send a message. You didn't post anything cryptic. You didn't even think about them for most of the day. And that's exactly the problem for them. Because if you had reacted, if you had spiraled, if you had given them a single crack to point at, they'd have something to hold on to. A story, a justification. Instead, you gave them nothing, and nothing is the loudest thing a guilty mind can hear. Before we go further, if this is already landing somewhere real in you, hit like and subscribe, not because it grows a channel, but because it keeps this message moving toward the next person who needs to hear that the fight they didn't start is already being settled without them lifting a finger. Your support is what carries this forward. You're not just watching this, you're part of it. Now let's keep going, because there's more to this than a bad night's sleep. What's happening to them right now didn't begin the moment the fight ended. It began the moment they decided to start it. Every unnecessary word, every jab thrown for no reason other than to see if it would land, every attempt to make you smaller so they could feel bigger, all of it got logged somewhere they can't erase. Not by you, not by anyone watching, by them. Their own memory is the one keeping score now, and memory doesn't forget the moments it's ashamed of. It just waits for silence to bring them back. Think of it like a stone dropped into still water. The moment it hit the surface, they probably felt powerful, satisfied even, like they'd proven something. But a stone doesn't stop at the splash. It sinks. And it keeps sinking long after the ripples on the surface have gone flat and calm again. You're the calm surface now. They're still sinking, and the deeper it goes, the harder it gets to breathe at night. This is the part they will never say out loud, not to you, not to anyone. They know they started it. They know there was no real reason. They know that somewhere underneath the excuse they gave themselves in the moment, the truth was simple and ugly. They wanted to feel powerful for a second, and they picked you to make it happen. And now that the moment has passed, now that the audience has gone home, all that's left is the quiet, honest voice inside them that keeps asking the one question they can't outrun. Why did I even do that? Picture it like this. Imagine someone lighting a match just to watch it burn, not because they needed the light, not because anything around them was cold, just to feel the small rush of striking it. And then the wind shifts, and the flame turns back toward their own hand. That's what a pointless fight does. It was never about you. It was about them needing to feel something, control, power, relevance, anything. And now the thing they lit for their own entertainment is the thing keeping them up, staring at their phone, typing a message they'll never send, deleting it, typing it again. You might be wondering why this matters so much to say out loud, because you've probably spent nights wondering if you overreacted, if you were too calm, if you should have said more, be defended yourself louder, made them see it. Chosen one, hear this clearly. You didn't need to make them see anything. The universe doesn't require your explanation to deliver a consequence. It only requires their own conscience. And conscience always collects, eventually, quietly, at the worst possible hour for the person who owes the debt. If you feel that click of recognition right now, that quiet, this is exactly my story feeling, drop 77 in the comments. Let it be your marker, your way of saying you're still here, still paying attention, still ready for what's about to unfold. And if this message is doing something for you, if it's untangling a knot you've been carrying since that fight happened, consider dropping a super thanks. It keeps this mission moving, and it tells me you're not just scrolling past, you're actually here. So let's break this down, chosen one, piece by piece, because what's happening to them right now isn't random and it isn't temporary. It's a full unraveling, and it started the second they decided your peace was something they were allowed to disturb for no reason at all. Number 1. The fight that was never actually about you. Let's start here, because everything else builds from this one truth. They didn't pick a fight with you because of anything you did. They picked it because something in their own life felt out of control, and you were close enough, calm enough, steady enough to become the target. People who are settled in themselves don't go looking for reasons to knock someone else off balance. They don't need to prove anything, because they already know what they're standing on. But someone shaking on the inside, someone unsure of their own footing, they look for a place to plant that instability, and unprovoked conflict is one of the easiest ways to do it. You were simply there, calm, unbothered, not performing for anyone. And to a person already unsteady, that kind of calm can look like something to break. So they swung, not because you gave them a reason, but because breaking your peace felt, for one brief moment, like proof that they still had power over something. Here's the part that matters most, chosen one. A fight built on nothing cannot be won by the person who started it, because there was never a real prize to win in the first place. They can't collect an apology you don't owe. They can't collect a reaction you refuse to give. All they're left holding is the memory of their own decision, replaying on a loop with no audience left to validate it. Imagine someone throwing a punch in an empty room, convinced there's an opponent standing in front of them, and only realizing afterward that they were swinging at air the entire time. That's what a pointless fight becomes once the dust settles. Nothing lands, nothing sticks, except on them. Because the only person who has to live inside the decision to start something over nothing is the one who started it. You get to walk away and keep living your day. They get to carry the weight of knowing, deep down, that it was never really about you at all. It was about them, and now they know it, and knowing it is exactly what won't let them rest. That's the part worth remembering whenever you catch yourself replaying it too, chosen one, because it's easy to fall into the trap of wondering what you could have said differently, what you could have done to avoid it, what it means about you that someone decided to come at you like that in the first place. It means nothing about you. It never did. A fight with no real cause isn't a verdict on your character, it's a symptom of someone else's, and the sooner that distinction settles in fully, the sooner you stop carrying weight that was always, from the very first word, theirs to hold. Number 2. The reaction they wanted and the one you refused to give. Every pointless fight has a script hiding underneath it, even if the person starting it doesn't consciously know it. They want tears, or anger, or a long message defending yourself, or silence they can call weakness. They want something they can point to and say, "See, I told you they were like this." That's the entire purpose. Not resolution, not truth. A reaction they can use. And you, without even trying, without planning it, denied them the one thing they needed to make the fight mean something. You didn't cry where they could see it. You didn't type the paragraph defending every choice you've ever made. You didn't chase them down for closure. You simply let the moment be what it was. Ridiculous, unnecessary, theirs to own, and you moved on with your day. Imagine someone pulling back a bow, aiming carefully, releasing the arrow with everything they've got, only to watch it sail past a target that was never actually standing there. That's what happened. They built up to this moment. They rehearsed the confrontation in their head, probably more than once, imagining exactly how you'd respond, exactly how satisfying it would feel to see you shaken. And then you didn't shake. The arrow kept flying, past you, past the moment, and landed somewhere they now have to sit with alone. This is why they can't let it go. A fight that gets the reaction it wants ends. It resolves, one way or another, into a story both people can move past. A fight that doesn't get its reaction stays open. It hangs there, unfinished, nagging, because their nervous system is still waiting for the payoff that never came. You didn't refuse to react because you were trying to punish them. You refused because their fight simply wasn't worth your peace. But the effect is the same either way. They started something they can't finish, and unfinished things are exactly what keep a mind awake long after the lights go out. Number 3. The 3 a.m. replay they can't turn off. There's a specific kind of silence that only shows up late at night, after the distractions run out, after the phone stops buzzing, after everyone else in the house has gone still. It's in that silence that the mind stops letting things slide. During the day, they can outrun it. Work, noise, people, screens, all of it gives the brain somewhere else to point its attention. But at 3 in the morning, there's nowhere left to hide, and that's exactly when the fight they started comes back. Uninvited, full volume, on repeat. They hear their own voice saying the thing they said. They see your face, not reacting the way they expected. They feel, for a few unbearable seconds, exactly how small the reason for the whole thing actually was. And then it loops again. This isn't poetic exaggeration, chosen one. This is simply how guilt works when there's nothing left to numb it. The body knows the difference between conflict that was necessary and conflict that wasn't. And when it wasn't necessary, the nervous system treats it like unfinished business, flagging it, resurfacing it, refusing to file it away as resolved. Picture a song stuck on the same 4 seconds, over and over, no matter how many times you try to skip it. That's their night right now. Not because you're haunting them, you're not thinking about them at all most days. It's because they're haunting themselves, and they don't know how to make it stop, because the only thing that would actually stop it, real accountability, real humility, means admitting out loud that they started something over nothing, and that admission is the one thing their pride still won't let them make. So instead, they lie there, staring, replaying, waiting for a version of sleep that keeps arriving further and further away. Number 4. The apology sitting in their drafts, unsent. Somewhere in their phone right now, there might be a message that never made it past the drafts folder. Half a sentence, an attempt at explaining, maybe even the beginning of a real apology, typed out in a moment of honesty and then deleted before it could be sent, because sending it would mean admitting they were wrong first. That's the trap they built for themselves. Their pride picked the fight, and now their pride is the only thing standing between them and the one action that might actually let them sleep again. Imagine holding a heavy bag in your hands, knowing exactly where to set it down, knowing the relief that would come the second you let go, and refusing to put it down anyway, because letting go feels too much like losing. That's what they're doing with this apology, carrying it, rewriting it, never releasing it. Every day it doesn't get sent, it gets a little heavier, because it's no longer just about the original fight anymore. Now it's about how long they've let the silence sit, how many chances they've had and skipped, how much smaller the apology gets the longer they wait, until eventually it feels almost impossible to say at all. You don't need their apology to be okay, chosen one. That was never the thing keeping your peace intact. But it's worth understanding what it's doing to them, because a person who genuinely believes they did nothing wrong doesn't draft an apology in the first place. Somewhere inside, they already know, and knowing without acting on it is its own quiet punishment, one that doesn't need you to enforce it at all. Number 5. Why normal life stopped feeling normal for them. Here's something they haven't said to anyone, because saying it would mean admitting how much this is actually affecting them. The ordinary parts of their day don't feel ordinary anymore. Coffee doesn't taste the same in the morning. Conversations with other people drift, because part of their attention is somewhere else, stuck on a moment they can't undo. Shows they used to enjoy just play in the background now, noise instead of comfort. This is what unresolved guilt does when it isn't dealt with honestly. It doesn't stay in its lane. It leaks into everything else, quietly, until the person carrying it starts to wonder why nothing feels like it used to. They'll tell themselves it's stress, or tiredness, or a bad week. They won't say out loud that it started the exact day they decided to start something with you over nothing. But you can trace it if you're paying attention. Look at the timeline. Look at when the mood shifted, when the energy changed, when the little things stopped being enough to make them feel okay. It lines up. It always lines up. Imagine dropping a single drop of ink into a full glass of clean water. At first it looks small, contained, like it won't matter much. But given enough time, it spreads through the whole glass, tinting everything, until there's no part of that water left untouched. That's what an unnecessary fight does to a life that didn't need one. It doesn't stay isolated in that single argument. It spreads into mornings, into other relationships, into the quiet moments that used to feel light. And the frustrating part for them, the part they can't explain to anyone else, is that nothing on the outside changed. Their job is the same, their friends are the same, their days look identical on paper. But something underneath all of it shifted, and they know exactly when, even if they'll never admit it. You didn't do this to them, chosen one. You simply stopped absorbing what wasn't yours to carry, and once you stopped, the weight had nowhere else to go but back to the person who created it in the first place. Number 6. The people around them who quietly notice the shift. It's rarely just the person you're in conflict with who feels the aftermath. The people around them notice too, even if nobody says it directly. A friend picks up on the shorter replies. A family member notices the extra irritability over something small. A coworker feels the tension in a room that used to feel easy. People are more perceptive than we give them credit for, and when someone is carrying something they refuse to name, it shows up in everything they do, in the pauses before they answer, in the way they change the subject a little too quickly whenever your name accidentally comes up. Imagine a small crack forming in a piece of glass, invisible at first glance, easy to ignore if you're not looking closely. But every time pressure hits that glass, even gentle, ordinary pressure, the crack shows a little more, spreads a little further, until eventually it's the first thing anyone notices about it. That's what's happening around them right now. The people close to them aren't asking what happened, not directly, but they're seeing the crack. They're wondering why their friend or their family member seems different lately, heavier, more defensive, quicker to snap over things that never used to bother them. And here's the part that stings the most for someone in this position. They can't explain it without admitting the truth, so instead, they let people assume it's something else: work, money, tiredness, anything but the real reason. This is also, quietly, the reason apologies tend to arrive earlier, when a fight was actually justified, and tend to stall out or never arrive at all when it wasn't. A person defending a reasonable position doesn't usually spiral the way this one has. They might feel bad about the delivery, the tone, the heat of the moment, but they don't lose sleep questioning whether the entire premise was wrong. The fact that this particular silence has stretched on so long that no clean, simple apology has shown up yet tells you something important about how flimsy the original reason really was. A solid reason produces a short, direct conversation and a resolved conscience. A flimsy one produces exactly what's happening now: avoidance, distraction, tension leaking into unrelated rooms, and a person who would rather manage the fallout indirectly than face the plain, small, embarrassing truth out loud. Meanwhile, you're simply living your life, unaware of how loudly the fallout is echoing through rooms you're not even in. You didn't ask anyone to notice. You didn't need them to. But it's happening anyway, because that's what unresolved wrongdoing does. It doesn't stay contained to the two people involved. It ripples outward, quietly rearranging how people experience the one who started it, whether they ever find out the full story or not. And there's another layer to this that they haven't considered yet, but eventually will. The people watching that crack spread aren't just noticing a mood shift, they're quietly recalibrating how much they trust what this person says about other conflicts too. Once someone sees a person start something over nothing and then act strange about it for weeks afterward, they start applying a little more scrutiny to every story that person tells going forward. Was that other disagreement really as one-sided as they made it sound? Was that other person really as unreasonable as they claimed? Trust, once it develops a hairline fracture like that, rarely goes back to being perfectly solid again. It just gets handled a little more carefully from then on. The way people handle anything they've learned can crack under pressure. That's a cost they didn't calculate when they decided this fight was worth having. They weren't just spending your peace that day, they were quietly spending the full faith of everyone watching from a few feet away. And faith, once spent carelessly, is one of the slowest things in the world to earn back. Number 7. The excuse they built and the excuse that fell apart. In the moment they started this, they had a story ready. Everyone does. Nobody starts a fight and thinks of themselves as the villain in real time. They told themselves you were being difficult or distant, or that you deserved to be knocked down a peg, or that you needed to hear some hard truth they were somehow qualified to deliver. Whatever the excuse was, it felt solid enough in the moment to act on. That's how people justify starting something out of nothing. They build a small, temporary story just strong enough to carry them through the confrontation. The problem is that excuses built for a single moment rarely survive contact with time. Once the adrenaline fades, once the audience disperses, once they're alone with their own thoughts, instead of the heat of the argument, the excuse starts showing its cracks. They start remembering the parts they conveniently left out, the parts where you didn't actually do what they claimed, the parts where the whole thing started because they were looking for a reason, not because you gave them one. Imagine building a shelter out of paper during a storm you're convinced will pass quickly. It might hold for a few minutes. It might even feel sturdy while the wind is calm, but the moment real weather hits, the moment reflection and honesty roll in like a proper storm, paper doesn't stand a chance. That's what's happening to their excuse right now. It looked convincing in the heat of the moment. It's disintegrating in the quiet. And here's the uncomfortable part for them. Once the excuse falls apart, there's nothing left standing between them and the plain, simple truth. They started a fight over nothing, and they knew it was over nothing even while they were doing it. That kind of clarity doesn't arrive gently. It arrives at the worst possible hour, usually somewhere between midnight and dawn, and it doesn't leave until they're honest enough to face it head-on, something their pride still won't let them do. Number 8. Why your silence became the loudest sound in the room. There's a strange thing that happens when you refuse to argue back. People expect noise to be met with noise. It's the pattern most conflicts follow. One voice rises, the other rises to match it, and the whole thing escalates until someone gives in or walks away. When you don't follow that pattern, when you meet noise with steadiness instead, it doesn't calm the other person down the way people assume it will. It unsettles them, because now they're standing in a fight they built entirely alone, with no opponent pushing back to validate that the fight was ever real in the first place. Your silence didn't mean you had nothing to say. It meant you understood that nothing you said in that moment would have mattered to someone who was never actually listening for truth, only for a fight. So you gave them quiet instead. And quiet, chosen one, is not empty. Quiet is a mirror. It reflects everything they said right back at them, without softening it, without arguing it away, without giving them anything new to react to. Imagine yelling into a canyon, expecting an echo of agreement, and instead hearing your own words come back to you, clearer, colder, more obviously unreasonable than they sounded the first time you said them. That's what your silence did. It didn't fight them. It exposed them, simply by refusing to participate in the version of events they wanted to create. And now, in the quiet hours, that echo keeps coming back. Not because you're sending it, because they can't stop hearing themselves. Silence, when it comes from a place of genuine peace instead of fear, is one of the few things a person cannot argue with, negotiate with, or manipulate. It just sits there, steady, undeniable, forcing them to face a version of the moment they can't rewrite in their own favor. That's why it followed them home. That's why it's still following them now. Think about how differently this would have gone if they'd been met with the reaction they were hoping for. If you had raised your voice, they'd have a clean story today, one where the conflict was mutual, where both sides lost their temper, where the blame could be split evenly enough for their conscience to rest. Instead, the record they're left holding shows only one person escalating and one person staying exactly the same. Calm before, calm during, calm after. There's no way to split blame evenly across a record like that, no matter how they try to reframe it in their own head. That imbalance is precisely what makes it so hard to file away and forget. A fair fight fades into memory the way most ordinary disagreements do. An unfair one, where only one side actually behaved the way they wanted to be remembered, tends to stay sharp, vivid, and uncomfortably specific for a very long time. Number 9. The weight of a name they can't stop thinking about. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from thinking about someone you're trying hard not to think about. It takes more energy to avoid a thought than it does to simply have it. And right now, your name is taking up more space in their head than they'd ever admit to another living person. It shows up while they're trying to focus on something else. A task at work, a conversation with a friend, a show they're only half watching. It slides in sideways, uninvited, and pulls their attention somewhere they don't want it to go. This isn't about longing or missing you in some soft, sentimental way. This is about unfinished business, sitting in a mind that hasn't figured out how to close the file. Every time they try to move on, something drags them back. A memory of the exact words they used, a flicker of your face not reacting the way they expected, a low hum of knowing that whatever story they're telling themselves about that day isn't the true one. Imagine carrying a stone in your pocket that you didn't ask for, one that somehow got heavier every day you refused to set it down. You'd feel it in small ways at first, a little more tired by the end of the day, a little more distracted during conversations that used to hold your full attention. That's what carrying your name unresolved is doing to them. It's not loud. It's not obvious to anyone watching from the outside. But it's there, constant, low, draining a little bit of their focus every single day, because the mind doesn't let go of things it hasn't made peace with, and they haven't made peace with this, not even close. You're not doing anything to keep this alive, chosen one. You've likely moved on with your actual life, thinking about groceries and deadlines and people who actually deserve your attention. Meanwhile, they're stuck rehearsing a version of events that gets more uncomfortable every time they replay it, because the more honest their memory becomes, the less defensible their reason for starting it looks. That's the weight. That's what a name can do when it's attached to something a person knows, deep down, they shouldn't have done. Number 10. When guilt stopped visiting and moved in permanently. Guilt, in the beginning, is usually a visitor. It shows up after something goes wrong, sits with a person for a while, uncomfortable but temporary, and then leaves once the situation is addressed, apologized for, or genuinely resolved. But guilt that never gets addressed doesn't behave like a visitor for long. It stops knocking and starts unpacking. It finds a room in the mind and settles in, quietly rearranging the furniture until it feels less like an intruder and more like a permanent, exhausting resident. That's what's happened here. What started as a flicker of discomfort right after the fight has had enough time now to move in fully, showing up not just at 3 in the morning, but in small, unexpected moments throughout the day. A passing thought while driving, a strange tightness in the chest during an unrelated conversation, an irritability that doesn't match whatever small thing supposedly triggered it. People around them are noticing the guest that never left, even if they don't know its name. Picture someone who spilled something on a carpet years ago and never properly cleaned it. Someone who just moved a rug over the stain and told themselves it was handled. Every time they walk across that spot, some small part of them remembers what's underneath, even if nobody else in the room ever notices. That's what unresolved guilt does over time. It doesn't fade just because it goes unspoken. It waits under the surface, occasionally pressing up through the rug, reminding them it's still there, still unresolved, still theirs to deal with. And here's the part that should sit with you, chosen one, not with pity, but with clarity. You didn't put that guest in their head. You didn't design this consequence. You simply stopped absorbing what was never yours. And the moment you stopped, the debt they created had nowhere left to go but home, to the one person who owes it. There's a reason this particular kind of guilt is so hard to shake once it settles in, and it has less to do with the size of the original fight than with what it says about the person who started it. Small, honest mistakes are relatively easy to forgive yourself for, because they don't require you to question your own character, only your judgment in one moment. But a fight built on nothing forces a harder question underneath the surface, one most people spend real energy avoiding. It asks, what kind of person goes looking for a reason to hurt someone who never threatened them? That question doesn't have a comfortable answer, and until they're willing to sit with it honestly, the guilt attached to it isn't going anywhere. It will keep unpacking new boxes, keep finding new corners of the day to occupy, keep waiting patiently by the door for the one conversation that could finally show it out, an honest, unqualified admission that this was never about you at all. Number 11. The mirror they keep avoiding. There's a specific kind of avoidance that shows up after someone knows, somewhere underneath all their justifications, that they were wrong. It doesn't always look like guilt on the surface. Sometimes it looks like busyness, an unusually full schedule, a sudden interest in distractions that never used to matter much. Sometimes it looks like irritability toward people who had nothing to do with the original fight, snapping at a sibling, going quiet with a friend, picking small unnecessary arguments with people who are simply standing nearby when the pressure finally has to go somewhere. All of it is the same thing wearing different disguises. A person actively avoiding the mirror that would force them to see the moment clearly. Because here's what the mirror would show them if they let it. It would show them starting something over nothing. It would show them enjoying, for a brief moment, the feeling of having power over your reaction. It would show them expecting you to fold, and it would show the exact second they realized you weren't going to. And most uncomfortably, it would show them that the version of themselves who did all that isn't someone they actually respect. Nobody wants to look directly at that reflection. So they keep the lights dim, keep the noise up, keep their days full enough that there's no quiet moment left for the mirror to catch them off guard. Imagine walking past a mirror every single day, but always at an angle, always slightly turned, always managing to catch the frame without ever catching your own eyes. You'd know it was there, you'd feel its presence in the room, but you'd spend real effort never actually looking straight into it, because some part of you already knows what it would show. That's exactly what they're doing right now, chosen one, every single day since the fight happened. And the exhausting part about avoiding a mirror is that it takes constant, ongoing effort. It's not a decision made once and then forgotten. It's a decision they have to keep making, over and over, every time a quiet moment threatens to bring them face to face with themselves. Eventually, avoidance like that runs out of energy to sustain itself, because a person can only outrun their own reflection for so long before exhaustion forces them to stop moving, and in that stillness, whether they like it or not, the mirror finally catches up. Number 12. Why chasing your reaction only proved they needed it. Somewhere in the days after the fight, there's a decent chance they tried again. A comment dropped somewhere they knew you'd see it. A mutual friend casually asked about you. An old conversation resurrected for no clear reason. This is what happens when the first attempt to get a reaction fails. The need for it doesn't disappear, it just gets quieter and more creative in how it tries to reach you. And every attempt, no matter how small or indirect, reveals the exact thing they were hoping to hide, that they never actually stopped thinking about how this ended. People who have truly moved on don't circle back. They don't need one more glance, one more comment, one more small test to see if the door is still open. The fact that they keep finding small ways to check on you, to reference you, to leave a breadcrumb in your direction, tells you everything about who actually lost their peace in this. It wasn't you. Imagine someone who insists they're completely fine walking away from a fire, but keeps turning around every few steps just to check if it's really out. Someone truly unaffected doesn't look back that many times. The looking back is the tell. Every glance is an admission that the story isn't finished for them the way they've been claiming it is. And chosen one, you don't owe them the reaction they're fishing for. Not now, not later, not when they finally work up the nerve to be more direct about it. Your steadiness already told the whole story once. It doesn't need a sequel. There's also something worth noticing in how these small, indirect check-ins tend to escalate over time if they keep going unanswered. A single glance at an old conversation is easy to dismiss as curiosity. A second attempt, a slightly more obvious comment, a question phrased just carefully enough to sound casual while clearly fishing for information, starts to look less like coincidence and more like a pattern. Patterns reveal intention, and the intention here is rarely as innocent as they'd like it to appear. It isn't concern for your well-being driving these attempts. It's discomfort with an ending they didn't get to write. People who start fights over nothing are often used to being the ones who decide when a conflict is over, when the tension eases, when things go back to normal. What unsettles them here is that you took that decision entirely out of their hands, simply by not needing their permission to move forward with your life. That loss of control is uncomfortable in a way that's hard for them to name, so instead of naming it, they keep circling back, hoping one of these small attempts will finally land the reaction that gives them the ending they think they're owed. It won't, and that's exactly the point. Number 13. The sleep they traded for one moment of control. Sleep is honest in a way that daytime performance never is. During the day, a person can manage their face, choose their words, control the story they tell everyone around them. But sleep doesn't negotiate with pride. It only comes when the body and mind agree that nothing urgent is left unresolved, and right now, theirs don't agree on that at all. So they lie there, and the trade becomes obvious if they're honest with themselves for even a minute. They wanted one moment, one small hit of power, one flash of watching you react the way they'd imagined, and in exchange, they gave up something far more valuable: the simple, uncomplicated ability to close their eyes and rest. That's a brutal trade when you actually look at it plainly. A few seconds of feeling powerful for weeks, sometimes months, of restless, fractured nights. It wasn't even that big of a deal, they might tell themselves, trying to talk their own nervous system down. But the body doesn't listen to that kind of reasoning, because the body isn't reacting to the size of the fight, it's reacting to the size of the dishonesty sitting underneath it. Imagine spending your last bit of cash on something flashy and temporary, only to realize days later that you needed that money for something that actually mattered: rent, food, the basics that keep a life running smoothly. That's what they did with their peace. They spent it on a moment that gave them nothing lasting, and now they're short on the one resource that keeps a person functioning: stable sleep, and there's no quick way to earn it back, except through the one thing their pride keeps blocking: honesty. You might wonder why this matters to you at all, chosen one, since you're not the one lying awake. It matters because it proves something you may have quietly doubted about yourself in the moment. You didn't imagine the wrongness of what they did. You didn't overreact by staying calm. Their own body is now confirming, night after night, what you already knew the second the fight happened: that it should have never started, and now it can't be unstarted, only carried, badly, by the person who chose it. Number 14. Why they keep checking if you're okay, without ever actually asking. There's a particular kind of quiet surveillance that shows up after someone starts something they can't take back. They don't reach out directly, because reaching out directly would mean admitting there's something to address. Instead, they check in smaller, safer ways. A glance at your social media that they'll deny if asked. A question dropped casually to someone who still talks to you: how have they seemed lately? A lingering look across a room you're both forced to share for reasons that have nothing to do with either of you. None of it is concern in the way it might look from the outside. It's reconnaissance. It's a person trying to gather enough information to convince themselves that the damage wasn't as real as they suspect it was. They seem fine, they tell themselves, after finding a happy photo, a normal-sounding update, evidence that life is continuing without them. But notice what that relief actually reveals. Relief only shows up when there was real worry underneath it, and worry doesn't exist without guilt sitting somewhere close by. Imagine someone quietly checking a lock they already know is secure, over and over, not because the lock changed, but because their own certainty did. That's what this checking behavior really is. Not kindness, not friendship. A person trying to reassure themselves that the fight they picked over nothing didn't cost more than they're prepared to admit it did. And, chosen one, here's the part worth sitting with. You don't owe them the comfort of knowing you're fine. You're not responsible for managing their guilt or making their nights easier. Whether you're thriving or simply getting through your days, that information is yours to hold, not theirs to harvest quietly from a distance while still refusing to say a single honest word to your face. It's also worth noticing what this quiet surveillance says about the story they've built for themselves versus the one they're actually afraid of. Publicly, they've probably settled on a version where the whole thing was overblown, where you were simply too sensitive, too dramatic, too quick to walk away from something that, in their telling, wasn't that serious. But nobody checks that carefully on someone they genuinely believe overreacted. You don't quietly monitor the well-being of a person you're convinced wronged you first. You monitor the well-being of a person you suspect, somewhere underneath your own story, that you actually wronged. Every glance, every casual question to a mutual friend, every flicker of relief when you seem fine, is a small, involuntary confession that the version they're telling everyone else isn't the version they actually believe, when nobody's listening. Number 15. The final truth. Regret doesn't knock, it moves in. There's a myth people like to believe about consequences, that they arrive loudly, dramatically, in one clean moment everyone can point to and say, "There, that's when it happened." Real consequences rarely work that way. They arrive quietly, and then they stay. Regret doesn't knock politely and wait to be let in for a short visit. It lets itself in through the door they left open the moment they decided a fight over nothing was worth having. And once it's inside, it doesn't pack a bag and leave just because enough time has passed. It rearranges the furniture. It becomes part of the routine. It shows up in tired eyes during ordinary conversations, in the extra beat of hesitation before answering a simple question, in the low hum underneath even their good days that never quite lets them feel fully at ease. This is what they traded their peace for, chosen one, a moment of feeling powerful over someone who never gave them a real reason to feel threatened in the first place. And here's the part that closes this out with total clarity. You don't have to do anything else. You don't need to confront them, expose them, or wait for an apology that may never come. The fight they started already delivered its own verdict, and the sentence is being served every single night, in a silence they built for themselves, and now can't seem to leave. "I didn't think it would feel like this," is probably a thought they've had more than once by now. Quiet, unspoken, buried under whatever excuse they're still clinging to during daylight hours. But nighttime doesn't accept excuses the way people do. It only accepts truth, and the truth has been waiting patiently for them this entire time, right there under the surface, ready the moment the noise of the day finally goes quiet enough to hear it. So here's where this lands, chosen one. You didn't start this. You didn't need to win it. You didn't even need to fight it, not really. Because peace, real peace, the kind that doesn't need an audience or a reaction to prove itself, was already the win. While they were busy picking a fight over nothing, hoping to shake something loose in you, you were simply living, unaffected in the way that matters most. And that alone became the very thing they now can't stop replaying. There's something important to say clearly before we close this out. None of this is about wishing harm on anyone, or celebrating someone else's struggle from a place of cruelty. It's about recognizing a simple, steady truth, that peace protects itself, that unnecessary conflict tends to cost the person who starts it far more than it ever costs the person who refuses to participate in it. And that your calm was never weakness. It was the exact thing that turned an ordinary, forgettable moment into something they now can't stop thinking about. If you've ever wondered whether staying calm actually mattered, whether walking away without a scene actually meant anything, let this be the confirmation. It mattered. It's still mattering, every single night, somewhere you'll probably never see and never need to. You don't have to carry this story forward with anger. You don't have to check in on them, wonder about them, or give them one more second of your attention than they've already taken without asking. Your part in this ended the moment you refused to give them what they came for. Everything that's happened since then belongs entirely to them, and so does everything still to come. And if any part of you has been quietly carrying doubt about a fight you never started, a conflict you never asked for, a moment where you stayed calm and wondered afterward if calm was even the right call, let this be the message that settles it fully tonight. It was. It always was. You held your peace when it would have been easier to lose it, and that single decision is doing more work right now than any argument you could have won in the moment. There will probably come a day, sooner or later, when they finally do reach out with something closer to the truth. A real apology instead of a quiet check-in, an honest sentence instead of a carefully worded excuse. That day isn't yours to chase, and it isn't yours to wait around for either. If it comes, you'll deal with it then, from a place of peace rather than urgency, because you'll still be exactly what you are right now, unshaken, unaffected, standing on solid ground you built without needing their permission or their apology to feel steady on it. And if that day never comes, if they carry this quietly for the rest of their life, without ever saying the honest thing out loud, that changes nothing about where you stand either. Their silence was never a debt you were collecting. It was simply the natural, unavoidable outcome of a choice they made alone, and outcomes like that don't need your involvement to keep unfolding exactly the way they're meant to. So let them lie there. Let the ceiling stay exactly as far away and exactly as unhelpful as it's always been at 3 in the morning. Let the quiet keep doing what quiet always eventually does to a conscience that hasn't made peace with itself. You've got somewhere to be tomorrow, chosen one. Sleep well. If this message found you at the right moment, drop 77 in the comments and let it be your quiet confirmation that you see exactly what's happening, even from a distance. And if you want to help this reach the next person who needs to hear that their calm wasn't weakness, hit like, subscribe, and if you're able, leave a super thanks. Every bit of that support keeps this mission going, and it means more than you probably know. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying grounded when it would have been easier not to. And thank you for being exactly the kind of chosen one who doesn't need the last word to win the fight they never wanted in the first place. We'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care and good night.